Hello, this is AstrologyNewsReport.com with your hosts, David Anton Savage and Ron Berger.
Now we go to our third segment of this week's report, People in the News, where we will analyze the Vedic astrology birth chart of a newsworthy person.
This week we have decided to analyze the birth chart of Toronto's beleaguered mayor, Rob Ford. And there is some solid birth information on this very colorful politician. He was born on May 28th, 1969 in Etobicoke, Ontario, Canada, at 4 in the morning. And I have to say that this chart looks to be quite spot on.
Yes, David, I have to agree. This chart does not look like the chart of a quiet, retiring chap. His rising sign is Aries, an independent, dynamic fire sign ruled by the planet of energy and action, Mars. Rob Ford's first house of self and body has a lot of tension in it because Saturn, a severe enemy of Mars, is right there in his face, so to speak, in his first house. Whenever a planet occupies the ascendant, the qualities of that planet are a marked feature of that person. Saturn is the planet of responsibility and endurance. Mayor Ford got his position by showing the public that he was a guy who could get the job done. And in his present circumstances, Saturn's endurance is giving him the strength to hang in there. Saturn is, after all, the ruler of his 10th house of career and public deeds, as well as the 11th house of accomplishments and rewards.
No doubt about that. And as a general principle, having the ruler of the 10th and the 11th in the first is actually not bad for some measure of success in the world, even if it means that you will probably take what you do for a career as what stands for personal identity. You become your job. Just observe Rob Ford's reaction to being called out for bad behavior. Essentially, he argues that he can drink lots of booze and smoke crack and still do his job just fine. He fails to see that even if what he says could be true, it's very bad optics for the public.
Really. And he really is getting hit on an intimate level by this scandal. And how appropriate, since he is running his Saturn major period right now. But more on that later.
Let's look at another big factor in this chart, and that is the condition of the chart ruler Mars, which is retrograde in Scorpio, the other sign it rules, making it simultaneously the ruler of the ascendant and the ruler of the 8th in the 8th to boot. Ron, I have to hear what you have to say about this. It looks really turgid.
Well, certainly for an Aries rising person, having Saturn in the first house is one thing. But then to have its energy disposited to the problematic 8th house by its enemy Mars would draw the attention of any astrologer. That Mars, in addition, is retrograde, which gives some cause for concern. When the planet of action is going backwards, what you get is a pressure cooker effect, both psychologically and physically. At certain times, that pressure will blow. Recent photos of him literally look like he's the poster child for high blood pressure. Do remember that Mars is the blood flow in medical astrology, and Saturn represents pressure, restriction, and structure. But we will save that speculation on his health for our analysis a little later on.
I find it interesting that you first thought of him as a Virgo rising person before you ever saw his chart. Well, you weren't very far off. Mayor Ford has a Virgo moon along with a tight three-way conjunction between Jupiter, Ketu, and a retrograde Uranus. This shows that the qualities of Virgo, especially in its natural position as the original 6th sign of the zodiac, would manifest strongly in Rob Ford's life.
In fact, that's exactly how he came into prominence in the world of Canadian politics. He was so hands-on and detailed in his service to the public, he was known to show up even in front of people's homes to fix the potholes that they had complained about. This made him popular with the voters and helped to get him elected as mayor of Toronto, a world-class city. But that same attention to detail makes him deficient in the big picture area. Virgo can't see the forest for the sake of the trees.
What can we say about him as far as his public statements from his past as well as this scandal he has been facing over drug use? He is known to light it up with some of his retorts, so to speak.
Yeah, well, his natal sun, the fiery planet of authority and prestige, is tightly conjunct the planet of communications, Mercury, in his second house of speech, and they are both being directly influenced by the aspect of his retrograde Mars from the 8th house. Mars, as the planet of aggression and combat, loves to get into battle mode, so you know this guy can go off verbally when challenged.
Oh, yeah. I think the final thing for me is, as far as getting to the root of what defines Mayor Ford, is his Rahu-Ketu axis. Rahu represents what the soul is becoming in this lifetime. His Rahu is placed in mystical Pisces in the spiritual 12th house, where it combines with the energy of devotional Venus. This combination inclines him to be sympathetic to the disadvantaged and believe in a higher cause. But simultaneously, there's an inclination towards the downside of the 12th house, indulgence in hidden pleasures. And meanwhile, Ketu, the significator of past life habits, resides in the 6th house of service, in a workaholic sign, Virgo, along with the moon, significator of the public. All this tells me that Mr. Ford is quite a conflicted soul. He struggles a lot with contradictory energies, material and spiritual.
Okay, well, let's take a look at his predictive analysis. Does Mayor Ford get to keep his job? Toronto has municipal elections next year, and at least at this point, he still says he'll be running.
Well, this drug scandal has happened to him during the K2 subperiod of his Saturn major period. Saturn rules his 10th house of career and public life, and that universal unhinger is in his prominent and karmic 6th house of both service and enemies. So the timing of this event is right on target, but what has really caught my eye is the fact that he will enter his Venus subperiod this coming month of December. And though I hate to bring this up, he could be in for a health crisis.
Okay, David, let's see if we can suss that issue out, especially since you do not even need to be a doctor or an astrologer to see that Mr. Ford could do with some weight loss and stress management. Nonetheless, as we have mentioned before, the setup for Mars and Saturn in his chart would certainly lead us to assume that he would tend towards high blood pressure and a hypertensive personality. So when we see that he is about to enter a subperiod of Venus, and Venus qualifies as a double Maraca planet, that is, a death maker, for Aries rising charts, because it rules both the 2nd house and the 7th house, which are Maraca houses, and Venus, to top it off, is placed in his 12th house, the house of endings and loss.
Again, Saturn, the major period ruler, is his 10th house lord of career in his 1st house of self. So you have to say that the impact of this scandal is no small matter for him, and even the possibility of losing his position is especially stressful. And let's not forget, Mars, the planet of attack, will be transiting his 6th house of health starting next week and continuing for 8 months. I hate to say it, but a heart attack or a stroke is not out of the question.
Yeah, the irony here is that Venus is exalted in Pisces in the 12th house with Rahu, and both are across the way from his strong 6th house of service and his Virgo moon. So for a politician, it's clear that he does have at least some support from the public to keep going. Mayor Ford does actually want to continue being of service to the voting public. You can't say that this guy is all bad.
Yes, that's true. My view is that a health crisis will intercede and take precedence over his future in politics.
Okay, well, we'll see if your prediction holds true.